My name is Piper. I grew up in a small lakeside town in the state of Minnesota. As the eldest of two daughters, I always tried to make my parents proud. But somehow, it never seemed to be enough. My younger sister's name is Lana. Ever since she learned to talk, she had a way of drawing all the attention. Golden hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile that could melt anyone. Lana was the sparkling firework in a quiet house, and everything revolved around her. I was just the quiet shadow, well-behaved, never a bother. When I was 9, my parents bought Lana a pink bicycle with a basket on the front, just because she'd been good for a week. Meanwhile, I spent the whole summer cleaning the backyard, folding laundry, mopping the floors, only to hear, "Good job, Piper." No hugs, no reward, not even a compliment warm enough to reach my heart. I didn't blame Lana. She was just a kid. But I started to understand. No matter what I did, my parents' eyes always settled on her. I was a good student. My A+ tests were proudly taped on the school fridge. But when I brought home a high score from a district math exam, Mom barely looked up before turning to ask Lana what kind of cookies she wanted. I stood there with my certificate in hand, and for the first time, I felt cold in a kitchen burning from the oven heat. My dad often called Lana Daddy's little princess. Me? I was the older sister. A label, not a person. Every time Lana begged for a new dress, the latest iPhone, or even concert tickets in Minneapolis, my parents found a way to get it. As for me, I had to save every spare dollar from part-time jobs since I was 15 just to buy a used laptop for school. Once, I asked my mom, "Can I buy that computer? I need it to write my paper." She glanced at me and said, "Piper, you always think about money. Wait until Christmas." Meanwhile, Lana had just been gifted a nearly $700 designer purse from Dad for no reason other than she's sad about her breakup. I didn't cry. I didn't rebel. I just stayed quiet, retreated to my room, and kept studying. Studying to escape a house where every step I took felt invisible. At 16, I earned a summer scholarship to a creative writing camp in Seattle, a rare opportunity I had dreamed about for years. Heart-pounding, I brought the acceptance letter home and handed it to my parents. Mom skimmed it, set it on the table, and asked, "Can Lana go with you? It'd be too inconvenient for you to go alone." My hands stiffened around the paper. I had worked so hard for this, and all they could think about was how to attach Lana to it. It wasn't jealousy. I was just tired. Tired of striving for recognition. Tired of being dismissed every time I tried. I realized that in my parents' eyes, flashiness and noise always earned more favor than quiet dedication. And I was never the kind of child they turned their heads for. I left home at 18 with an old suitcase, a used laptop I bought from a shop near the gas station, and an admission letter to the University of Oregon. With a full scholarship. No farewell party, no goodbye hugs. As I stepped out the door, Mom said only, "Don't overwork yourself and get sick, Piper." Lana would be upset if that happened. I paused, looked at her, then walked away in silence. In Eugene, I rented a tiny room near campus, with peeling wallpaper and wooden floors that creaked whenever I turned over in bed. But it was the first space I truly owned. No interruptions, no pop music blaring, no judgmental glances. Just me, my books, and goals no one else had written for me. I studied by day and worked nights at the cafe inside the campus library. Some nights I clocked out close to 1 a.m., washed my hands, glanced at my watch, and rushed home to finish my paper. I didn't feel burdened. Every extra hour was a step closer to the life I wanted. After 2 years, I'd saved enough to move into a small apartment with a private kitchen. I'd bought my first study desk at a garage sale for $20 and scrubbed off the peeling paint myself. I pinned a world map to the wall and marked every place I dreamed of seeing, even if I knew it might take years. Around that time, Lana moved out too, but not to study. She signed up for a short makeup course in Los Angeles, then dropped out after 6 weeks. The reason? It didn't fit my personal aesthetic. Next came a hairstyling class, then nail design, then spa management. None of them lasted beyond 3 months. Whenever I called home, Mom would answer excitedly, "Piper, did you know Lana just joined a high-end skincare workshop? The instructor said she has a natural eye for beauty." I would respond simply, "I just submitted my research paper for the Seattle conference." She'd go quiet for a second, then quickly change the topic, always back to Lana. I learned not to expect anything from those calls, but one time, after hanging up, I opened my laptop and stared at the payroll file from my internship. It was the highest student stipend I'd ever received, and enough for me to start thinking, maybe it was time to buy a car. A month later, I signed papers for a silver used car from a widowed woman in Springfield. It was old, but the engine ran fine. As she handed me the keys, she smiled and said, "This car took me to my first job interview, and later to the hospital to give birth to both my girls. I hope it brings you luck too." I nodded. That car became my quiet companion, driving me to part-time jobs, internships, and eventually interviews. I never told my family, partly because I didn't want to, mostly because I knew they wouldn't care. Still, news has a way of finding its way home. One Saturday afternoon, while working at the student support office, I got a call from Lana. "Pipper!" Her voice sparkled like she was calling from a poolside party. "Heard you bought a car! So cute! But..." "It's a used one." I gripped the phone. "It runs well. I paid for it myself with money I earned." "Oh my God, are you still doing those little jobs? Why don't you find someone to take care of you? Like Nick. He just got me a 4-figure handbag." I hung up while she was still listing the expensive gifts he had gotten her. That night, I sat in the car, hands on the steering wheel, my mind spiraling with unspoken questions. Had I chosen wrong? Was independence really something to be proud of? Then I remembered those nights I stayed up to meet deadlines, the times I assembled furniture by myself, painted the walls with secondhand brushes, and cooked with the old pot I got from the flea market. No one took care of me, but no one had the right to take anything from me either. And that, to me, was more than enough. 3 years after I signed the papers for that used car, I was sitting in an office on the 6th floor of a glass tower in downtown Portland, staring at the familiar gray sky. On my desk lay an embossed invitation card. "Congratulations on your appointment as Regional Project Supervisor." I was only 24, the youngest person on the team to hold that position, and the only woman. I had bought my first apartment using the savings I had built over 3 years. It wasn't big, but it was bright enough, quiet enough, and far enough from the town where I'd grown up invisible. I decided to throw a small housewarming party. Nothing fancy. Just a few close colleagues and, out of courtesy, my family. I arranged every glass and table napkin by hand, chose soft yellow lighting instead of harsh white, laid out appetizers I made myself, and set a jar of wildflowers I'd picked up at the morning farmer's market on the kitchen shelf. When the first coworkers arrived, the apartment slowly filled with warmth, laughter, congratulations, and the sound of wine bottles being opened. People asked about my journey, about the new project, about my work at the tech zone in northern Portland. I told them, briefly, but with a pride I had never dared show before. At exactly 7:15, the doorbell rang. I opened it to see my dad, Mom, and Lana. Mom wore a tight red dress, Lana a cream-colored jumpsuit, holding a large designer purse. Both of them glanced around like they were walking into a model home tour. "Oh, cozy," Mom said dryly, then stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. My dad nodded at me before turning immediately to greet the other guests. Lana tiptoed around a few people and placed her bag on the couch like it had been reserved just for her. When one of my colleagues asked about the project I was leading, my mom suddenly cut in. "She's smart, sure, but did you all know that Lana was just invited by a studio in LA to shoot for a lingerie brand? They said she's got that very Instagrammable look." Everyone gave polite chuckles. Before I could respond, Lana chimed in with a syrupy tone. "Oh, Mom, stop, it's embarrassing." But yeah, they did say I have a visual presence that doesn't need editing. I tightened my grip on the glass in my hand. Monica, one of my colleagues, glanced at me and raised an eyebrow silently. I gave a faint smile and murmured, "She's my sister." Halfway through the evening, while I was talking to two senior managers about expansion plans for other states, Mom cut in again, as if she couldn't stand me having the spotlight too long. "Oh, Piper, did you tell everyone about Lana being invited to that event in Miami? She's going to be the face of an organic cosmetics brand. Probably getting a brand deal out of it, too." I kept my gaze on Mom, then shifted to Lana, who was still beaming with that smug gleam in her eyes. After my parents and Lana left, Monica came over, put a hand on my shoulder, and asked, quietly, "Piper, are you okay? Earlier?" Nick and Rachel both noticed. "It's like every compliment in your family gets redirected to your sister." I smiled, this time with real fatigue. "I'm fine. I'm used to it." "But that's not normal," she said seriously. "No one should be treated like that in their own family." I didn't say anything else. That night, after the guests had gone, I washed the glasses in warm water. There were still a few crumbs and bits of wrapping paper on the table. I should have felt happy. It was a major milestone, but part of me felt empty, like someone had quietly blown out the candle I lit for myself. I had invited them, hoping to patch something back together, but all I got was the same spotlight cast on Lana, and me, still behind the curtain, like I had been for over 20 years. I knew that call would come, and it did. On a Thursday morning while I was in a meeting with the project director about our expansion plan in Seattle, my phone lit up with the name Lana Family, complete with the heart emoji my mom had added ages ago. I declined the call and replied briefly, "In a meeting. Call later." Half an hour later, the phone buzzed again. A text from Mom. "Lana's engaged. Her fiancé is the only son of Mr. and Mrs. Rowan, the owners of that beachfront hotel chain. You should call and congratulate your sister." I stared at the message for a long while. I wasn't surprised, but that same familiar weight, those two words, Lana, pressed down again, as if they'd never left. 2 months later, my family held a pre-wedding gathering in San Diego, where Lana's soon-to-be in-laws owned a beachside resort. I was invited, but nobody asked about the timing or where I'd stay. Mom sent me a coach ticket, while clearly booking business class for Lana and my parents. "You're used to being independent," Mom texted. "Don't make a fuss. Lana's wedding is what matters right now." I flew in and booked my own hotel far from the resort. Not out of spite, but because I needed distance to stay calm. The wedding was held on a private beach, complete with live music and silk runners leading all the way to the tide. Lana appeared in a custom gown from Paris, wearing a sparkling diamond ring that shone as brightly as her voice through the mic. "Thank you all for witnessing the most special day of my life. With love and with family, especially Mom and Dad." I became the woman I am today. I stood in the crowd, my shoes sinking into the sand. Someone next to me asked, "Are you the sister-in-law?" I shook my head softly. "She's my sister." The reception went on late into the night. After fire dancers and fireworks, I was about to leave when my mom grabbed my arm. "Aren't you going to take pictures with Lana? Everyone's doing family photos." I quietly stepped in, forced to smile under the camera like a shadow. In the photo, I was the only one wearing a work dress instead of evening wear. "And Lana?" She lit up the entire frame. A week later, I returned to Portland and buried myself in work, trying to scrub that event from my memory. But Lana didn't let me forget. Every day I saw her posts, Michelin dinners, Maldives trips, shopping in Tokyo, captioned with, "Wife life, spoil but earned." Meanwhile, Mom still called every weekend, her voice cheerful. "Lana's learning to bake French pastries. Her personal chef says she has a natural gift." Lana's husband gave her the newest Tesla. Now that's what I call a thoughtful son-in-law. "Piper, did you see that?" You should really learn from how Lana keeps up her image around others. A talented woman who's always so stiff. Who's going to love that? I ignored it. Over time, those calls had turned into background noise. Predictable, numbing, and impossible to take seriously. The following month, I was invited to speak at a tech conference in Chicago, a huge step forward. I'd been selected as one of 5 standout figures in the field of federal project management systems. Out of courtesy, I sent my mom a photo of the invitation. I wasn't expecting much, but it still felt polite. She replied 3 hours later, "Oh, looks fine, but Lana's about to be featured in Lifestyle Harmony magazine in the Inspiring Women section. Beautiful and talented. That's real pride right there." I turned off my phone. That evening, I sat alone in my apartment, city lights flickering outside the window. In my hand was the relocation offer to Boston headquarters. A dream I never dared to have when I was a library cleaning intern. But no one knew, and I no longer felt like telling anyone. During the press event in Boston, while I was presenting our newly launched internal data oversight platform, my phone started buzzing nonstop in my coat pocket. I glanced at the screen between sessions backstage. 5 missed calls. From Mom. I stepped quickly out to the balcony. It was lightly raining. The moment I picked up, my mother's voice cracked through in panic. "Piper, come home, right now. Lana, Nick kicked her out. She's panicking. No one can calm her down. Your dad's trying to find some sedatives." I gripped the phone tighter, a cold sensation crawling up my spine. "What did he say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She said, "Nick told her she's shallow, only good for spending money and showing off. He canceled her credit cards, took the car, froze all her accounts, and you know what? They never registered the marriage. Nothing's under her name." I closed my eyes, not out of satisfaction, but because a familiar sorrow was seeping through my chest. 2 days later, I arrived at my parents' home in Eugene. The front door opened, and the scene in the living room stunned me. Lana was sitting on the floor, eyes swollen, hair a mess, clinging to a wine glass trembling with red liquid. Shards of their wedding photo frame were scattered beneath the coffee table. The wall bore splashes of wine like bruises left by despair. "She hasn't eaten in 2 days, my mother whispered, her eyes rimmed red. "Just drinks, sleeps, and cries again." I stepped closer, sitting at a cautious distance from Lana. "Lana." She looked up at me, empty-eyed. "Nick said my sister actually earns her own money, but me, I'm just a leech. He said I'm not worth keeping around. Piper, he said I was a burden." I stayed silent. In that moment, all the resentment I'd buried for years melted away. Not because I forgot, but because I knew that saying the wrong thing now would shatter everything. 3 days passed, and Lana still wouldn't leave her room. My mother started calling me in turns, asking if I could help her bounce back by taking her to a spa or shopping. She's used to comfort, you know. I sat at the kitchen table, folded up a newspaper job listing for local office positions near Eugene, and gently placed it in front of my mother. "I think Lana should try working. Nothing fancy, just somewhere she feels needed. A bit of responsibility, a fresh routine." My mother blinked, then scoffed. "Piper, what are you saying? The girl just suffered major emotional trauma, and you want her to work? How heartless are you?" "It's not heartless, it's reality. If you keep coddling her like this, she'll never recover." A chair screeched loudly. My father walked in. His eyes burned into me like I'd betrayed the family. "Leave this house." I looked at him, stunned. "What did you say?" I asked. "Leave this house, right now. If you can't show compassion for your sister, then don't stand here pretending to help. You've never known how to love anyone." I stood up slowly. No protests, no explanations. I was used to being thrown out of a place called home, just for saying what others refused to hear. I walked to my car. It was raining. As I opened the door, I glanced back at the living room window. The curtains didn't move. Inside, they were probably huddled around the girl they always treated as the center of their universe. And me? I'd been pushed out of orbit. Again. A week after I left my parents' house, I returned to Boston and tried to bury myself in work like always. But this time, the exhaustion seeped into every meeting, every email, every lonely step inside my tidy, silent apartment. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't have the strength. Just tired and sad. On the first Monday of the month, while clearing out my inbox and sipping lukewarm coffee, I saw an unfamiliar subject line. "Congratulations, you're the winner." I was about to delete it like any other spam email when I paused at the company name. Voyage One Global, the company I had done a travel experience survey for last year. I opened the message and read each line carefully. "Congratulations, you are one of 5 lucky winners of the 5 months, 5 continents program. The prize includes a 5-month all-inclusive world cruise, departing next month from Miami." I read it 3 times. Then again. I couldn't believe it, but it was real. After confirming my identity and completing the necessary paperwork, they sent me the detailed itinerary, confirmation code, and list of destinations. Lisbon, Cape Town, Sydney, Tokyo, Vancouver. I laughed, then burst into tears. In my tiny kitchen, I cried like I hadn't cried in years, after being strong for so long that I'd gone numb. That evening, I called home. Even though I had promised myself I'd never reach out first, deep down, I still hoped my mom would say something kind, just once. She picked up after the 3rd ring. "Hello? I just wanted to let you know. I'm going on a 5-month world cruise, fully sponsored. I won a prize from that travel survey last year." A pause. Then her voice came through. "Lana's having a really hard time. Do you think this is the time to talk about vacations?" I took a breath. I just wanted to share. "Well, here's something to share," she continued without hesitation. "If you truly cared, you'd give your spot to your sister. Lana needs this trip more than you. You're already used to being on your own." My stomach dropped. My grip on the phone began to tremble. A beat of silence passed, then I said, slowly, but firmly, "I'm not giving up the ticket. I've stayed quiet long enough." Her voice, sharp and cold, shot back. "Piper." I didn't say another word. I simply ended the call. No texts, no callbacks, and no apology. A month later, I stood on the ship's deck, staring out at the deep blue sea. A cup of hot ginger tea in hand, the salty wind blew through the strands of hair near my face. The ship had just left port in Miami, and inside me was a quiet, gleaming emptiness. I didn't talk to anyone during the first 2 days. I just read, wrote, and slept dreamless sleep. But on the 3rd day, I started chatting with an elderly couple from Arizona, then a documentary filmmaker from Montreal, and a Belgian woman on her sabbatical. They only shared my first name, no job title, no backstory. No one knew I had once been kicked out of my family's house for suggesting my sister get a job, and I didn't need them to know. The trip became a slow transformation. In Lisbon, I wandered cobbled slopes and tasted warm egg tarts in a tiny cafe filled with soft guitar music. In Cape Town, I stood on a rocky cliff, staring into the Atlantic, feeling small but strangely grounded. In Kyoto, I sat under fiery red trees and wrote the first line in a journal I'd never dared to open. I'm not anybody, just someone who walked away from all that was left unsaid. Throughout the journey, I let everything go. Unread messages, a silent inbox, unanswered calls. One windless morning on deck, I stood at the railing, hands empty. Sunlight poured over the ocean, gentle as a touch that needed no explanation. No response needed, no sharing, no comparison. Just enough to breathe a little deeper and keep that moment for myself. I returned to Boston on a cool, early autumn afternoon. The leaves lining the streets were turning golden, and dry wind rushed through familiar corners like a dream half remembered. I pulled my suitcase up to my apartment, reached into my coat pocket for the key, but paused. The lock had been changed. A strange feeling struck my chest. I tried again. It didn't fit. Heart pounding, I knocked. No answer. I rang the bell. Footsteps shuffled inside. Then the door opened. Lana. She stood in front of me, wearing a silk robe, hair tied up, holding a smoothie, blinking as if I were an unexpected guest. Oh, you're back? I thought you were still in Asia. What are you doing here? My voice barely sounded like my own. Just staying for a bit. Mom said it was a waste to leave the place empty while you were gone. Who gave you the key? You left a spare at Dad and Mom's. I borrowed it. What's the big deal? I walked in without saying more. The apartment was a mess. Takeout boxes on the counter, clothes draped over the couch, half-burned expensive candles by a pile of fashion magazines. I looked around, trying to steady myself. Where's your car? Lana rolled her eyes. Oh, that. Mom said you didn't need it, so they sold it. The money went towards stress relief for me. Spa, meditation, some therapy sessions. All well-intended. I froze as if someone had poured ice water down my spine. The car I bought after 3 years of side jobs, the old beat-up car I used to wash with cold water every winter weekend. Do you even realize that car was my personal property? But your family, why get so worked up? I turned and walked onto the balcony. My chest felt like it was being crushed, but I didn't stay quiet anymore. Get out of my apartment. Right now. Lana scoffed and didn't move. You're being dramatic. It's just a car in an apartment you left empty for months. I'm your sister. I looked her straight in the eye. My voice was calm and steady. I don't need to explain. Pack your things, leave. Within 1 hour. Lana snapped. You're so selfish. The whole family supported me through a crisis, and you come back and make a scene. Do you even have an ounce of compassion? I gave a soft laugh. Not because it was funny, but because those words no longer had power over me. Selfish isn't holding on to what's yours. Selfish is believing everything you need will magically come from someone else's effort. She stormed off to the bedroom and slammed the door so hard that one of the picture frames shifted and fell. I didn't wait. I grabbed my phone and called an attorney. That car was in my name. So was this apartment. And this wasn't about family anymore. Or forgiveness. This was about a grown woman protecting her home and the labor she'd invested in it. 30 minutes later, I knocked on Lana's door. You have 1 hour to pack. From now on, any violation of my personal property will be handled legally. She stared at me, stunned, speechless. But I didn't wait for a reaction. I had waited far too long for things that should have been clear years ago. That evening, after the apartment door shut behind Lana, I sat alone in the mess she left behind. It was different now. I felt at peace in my own home. No voices cutting through my evening, just the gentle hum of the dishwasher and the scent of mint from a new candle. A quiet that actually meant something, and no one was ever going to take that from me again. 3 days after Lana left, I got an email from Mom. A car is just transportation. Family is what matters most. Do you really want to blow things out of proportion? No apology. No acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Just another guilt-laced message. The kind they always knew how to deliver at just the right time. To just the right weakness. I didn't bother replying. I simply forwarded the car title and illegal sale report to my lawyer. All the evidence was there. The sales receipt, bank transfer into Mom's account, and text messages they thought were harmless, but were full of incriminating details. I didn't want to sue. I didn't want to drag my parents to court. But I couldn't keep letting silence enable their wrongdoing. The lawsuit began quietly. I told no one, except my legal team and 2 close friends. During the process, Mom called. Then Dad. Then Lana. When I didn't answer, they switched to letters. even handwritten notes, something they never did when I was a child. You really want to see your parents lose their house? We were just safeguarding your assets, not stealing. People will think you're an ungrateful daughter. I folded the letters and placed them in a box. Didn't reread them. Didn't reply. The court would do that for me. The hearing stretched over 6 weeks. Mom hired her own lawyer, claiming temporary use for family purposes. But the financial records, unauthorized transactions, and luxury expenses were indisputable. When the final ruling came, I didn't expect much. But I won. My parents were ordered to repay the full value of the car, plus legal fees and civil damages. To pay up, they had to sell the house in Eugene, the one I grew up in for 18 years. Months later, with everything settled, I moved to a new apartment, higher up, farther away, with fewer memories. Still in Boston, but now my view looked over the river, not the worn-down row houses where I once began. Work was going well. I got promoted to East Coast Regional Director, a title I once believed only belonged to other people. But achievements didn't bring tears like they used to. Awards and promotions didn't patch what had been overlooked for years. They were just surface markers for something deeper. I had learned how to protect myself, with the law, with boundaries, and with well-timed silence. Lana texted me. Once. You got what you wanted. Happy now? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I had learned. Some relationships, if they are to survive at all, must remain at a safe distance. Not too close to hurt. Not too far to hate. I didn't speak to my parents again. Not out of bitterness, but because I was no longer that child willing to sacrifice her peace to preserve a version of family that only existed in her imagination. That night, I stood alone in the living room, looking out at the city under soft amber light. I didn't check my phone. I didn't think about tomorrow. I just stood there, letting the glow from the streets blur into the reflection on the glass, spilling into the stillness inside me. Not joy, not sadness. Some things don't need to be named. Some changes arrive without a sound. They simply stay, light as wind, quiet as truth. This story isn't about revenge. It's about the slow journey to choosing yourself. Sometimes, the smallest things, a car, an apartment, a quiet evening, mark the line between damage and freedom. In real life, what we often need most isn't understanding. It's the courage to stop enduring. And when we choose peace over forced belonging, that's when real living begins. What would you have done in Piper's place? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful, true stories about family, identity, and the turning points that shape us.